Okay, so this is the latest report around the current work being undertaken by West Yorkshire Police and indeed myself within this office around the issue of human trafficking, modern day slavery. And am I handing over to you first, Dee, before?
Just by way of introduction, as you're aware, I do feel that West Yorkshire Police have been right at the forefront of trying to better understand what is taking place within our communities around modern day slavery. I know that you have a personal interest in this as well because of the role that you play nationally in terms of police and crime commissioners. So what we want to do with you today is to give you an update where we are in terms of all of that work. I'm going to introduce DCI Warren Stevenson, who's been leading this fantastically well, I have to say, in terms of this work, and hopefully give you some further reassurance that we're not enabling all the other forces to catch up with us. In fact, we want to stay at the forefront of trying to best understand what we can do about this absolutely horrific crime, and also reassure our communities that we are doing our very best to get information and intelligence about this. And again, if anybody is actually watching this piece later on, we may have opportunities for further information to come into us. Yeah,
thank you. Warren.
Commissioner, I'm Warren Stevenson, as introduced by the Chief Constable. Between 1st of April last year and this year, we've had 89 crimes reported, which mainly come under the new Modern Slavery Act, which is changed the way that people look and how it's recorded. So there is some legacy offences that we need to look at as well. Of those offences, there is a clear look at sexual exploitation, and that's split between sexual exploitation in the fullest sense, which is 26%, and 26% is domestic relating to child sexual exploitation offences. And that can be looked at around some of the operations you've seen ongoing through the force and getting those crimes up to date. 37% of those are forced labour, and that covers a whole plethora of work types around forced labour, but mainly looking at unskilled manual work, which is a discussion that we've had and we've been looking at. And then it rolls on to construction work around factories. But there's also a 7% of those crimes looking at criminal exploitation, which includes sham marriages. So we're looking at fraud and secondary types where we bring people over to put in multiple applications. When you actually look at the breadth of suspects and victims, we're looking at there's 370 potential victims of human trafficking that are being recorded and living within our communities. And there are 251 people flagged to us that we suspect have been involved at some stage or currently under human trafficking now.
So just to be clear then, that's in addition to the 370?
Yes, totally separate. 251 people suspected of committing them and 370 victims living within ourselves for our community. The nationalities where they come from, where people always look towards, mainly for ourselves from Slovakia, followed by the other Eastern European countries of Hungary, Romania and Poland. Of those 379% are non-European Union, which are Pakistan and Vietnam, are the two predominant countries. We have the most suspects recorded ethnicity-wise. Majority of the offences are Asian. But other suspect countries that are close to that are Romania, Czech Republic, Slovakia and Hungary. But we're looking at the system itself of how they record the Romani gypsy community in relation to that and how that fits across borders and countries, because there needs to be a clearer distinction, and that's something we're trying to work out to understand so that we can report on that better and work with them. And the European suspects, non-European suspects, make up 7% of all recorded suspects on our systems. I don't propose to go through the breakdowns again of the crime system, not intelligence systems, but it replicates what we know on the intelligence systems as well. We've also looked at what the pull factors are for where West Yorkshire sits around the area, because we don't have a port of entry outside of Leeds Bradford Airport, but it's not predominantly used by flights as much as, say, Doncaster Airport is, which has a greater number of flights coming in from Eastern Europe. And we've worked with South Yorkshire Police, as we've done with the Anti-Trafficking network, to try to get the messages out to do more protect work at the points of entry coming into ourselves, as we've discussed. And then that when we've looked at 54% of the nominals were trafficked in through Dover, that were sort of further afield than where we are now, so they're travelling some distance to come into the West Yorkshire area. And only 12% were recorded as coming in via airports or ports in the north of England, so it's a migration of the country basically is what we're seeing over half of our victims. We have good road networks, I think, in and through West Yorkshire, and that is part of the reason that we're seeing there, but also there are other pull factors around the cost of housing stock and what is available up here for the low-skilled manual work in particular. But we also have to, I think we shouldn't step away from the fact that within our community we have good Eastern European communities that are well established and well looked after and feel safe to come and settle here. That's also a pull factor for other people to utilise and actually do them a disservice by utilising those established communities. Again, we break those down for you and look at the fact that the Office of National Statistics show that we still have a strong manufacturing base in West Yorkshire and wider, and that has that low-skilled manual labour element to it that requires people to come in. We're still seeing the intelligence gaps around human trafficking, and this is brought about by a number of reasons, not clearly recording on the intelligence system, not being easy to extract because of the way that we record it, the simple things of the Modern Slavery Act and how that's been updated on the computer system and what details have been put into it. And also, because referrals can be made from non-government organisations as first responders, the detail and level of detail they put in isn't captured by ourselves, and we have to go chasing it all the time, so it's chasing that. But we still need to understand that. And we're looking at trying to make those improvements and with those intelligence gaps as detailed on here. Including working with joint action days with other organisations, as we've outlined with the National Crime Agency, you're aware of, where we've looked at, that was forced labour, and there'll be further ones to come during the coming year. The work that you've done in respect of the team that we've set up, we're now seen as a point of consultation for other forces that try and play catch up. And as you know, through the work that we jointly do, we're looking towards how we can formalise that and doing a further day in September to actually bring people from other agencies and also things like the banking sector to actually say, you hold intelligence, you can work with us, and you need to understand this to be able to report into us. So that further work around the setting up of the team and what they do and how they do it is detailed within this report. The current team that is headed after being set up together is around what they've been looking at, and there is a number of high-level investigations going across all 5 policing districts, and the details of those are detailed in here, what we're looking at specifically. And they're either ongoing operations or current ones. And that led to the intelligence picture and the decrease that we've already mentioned, which on the first 3 months of this year compared to last year is less than half, or just over half I should say, submissions of intelligence, which is a big risk for ourselves if we don't have that intelligence coming in. The strategic risk we've outlined and the future considerations, which we've spoken about in relation to the wider partnership work that's already ongoing with the Anti-Trafficking network. These implications wider, I think, in respect of ourselves leaving the European Union and the displaced persons that's going to create, and how they're going to become susceptible to becoming victims of modern slavery. And as I say, later this year there's the next networking event that we're hosting at the Bishop Yard House complex.
Okay, thank you. And as you say, there's an appendices attached to it which just sort of outlines the role that myself and this office have taken around the setting up of the West Yorkshire Anti-Trafficking Network, and then more recently the National Anti-Trafficking and Modern Day Slavery Network with other police and crime commissioners. And there is the third meeting of that group happening next week down in London. So we are obviously linking in with Kevin Hyland, the National Anti-Slavery Commissioner, the Home Office, and the Gangmasters Licensing Authority will now be attending that meeting as well. So there's no doubt there's a real big job of work to continue here, particularly when you did draw attention to, and it's an obvious one, around what is or what will be the impact of Britain leaving the European Union, and really part of that wider negotiation, I suppose, with government is crucial in terms of security, and what things can be put in place to try and mitigate the worst impacts, if you like, of what may or may not happen. So in terms of some of the questions, it's really just asking, are you satisfied that in West Yorkshire that all crimes that come to the attention of the police, including crimes that come to light through the national referral mechanisms, is it a situation you are broadly content with at the moment?
Yeah, I think the reality is when we can identify it as a human trafficking, human slavery crime, that's absolutely how it's dealt with, and it goes through the national mechanism. I suppose in truth, Commissioner, there may be the possibilities that officers or reporting bodies, particularly the third-party reporting, don't necessarily always recognise what it is that they're dealing with, and that's when we rely on the team to make up those follow-up inquiries and better assess as to what we're actually dealing with. But once we've identified it, absolutely, I'm satisfied that we are recording those as crimes.
Yeah, because you touched on the fact that the first 3 months of this year compared to last year have seen that quite a big decrease in numbers of intelligence reports coming in. So can you just say a bit more about what it is that you're going to try and do to address that situation?
I think the thing for us is the reinvigoration of the work that we did in 2015, without a doubt. We've seen that cybercrime has been up there on the front, and you'll always see peaks and troughs, unfortunately, in relation to intelligence submissions, because there's only a finite number of people that's collating that in some respects. But the side issue is we reinvigorate that, we go again with it, and which is the next step. So the district forums have got it on their agenda items that you've set up. The Anti-Trafficking Network has got it as an agenda item on theirs to set up and just go again to make sure that it keeps going in. And that soft intelligence, has that really been coming in? And as Ma'am sort of like referred to, the duty to notify bit about making sure we capture the victims is also playing a part under the Modern Slavery Act. That the duty to notify forms go direct to the Home Office and can bypass the police and everybody else, and we pick it up third hand many times later. So in some respects we're picking up legacy intelligence, if you like, but it's months later, which isn't good enough, so we're trying to tighten those processes.
I think there is a slight risk here, Commissioner, around sequencing, because at the moment it feels as if there is a different campaign every week, and I worry about members of our community almost getting campaign fatigue. So I think it's quite important to make sure that we sequence each of our campaigns so that one naturally flows into the next and so on, and I think having that kind of national oversight as well is quite helpful, so that we can really make sure that members of the public know what the signs are to look for, so that they can then point us in the direction that we need to go in relation to each specific type of crime.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we heard about an awful case with this last week. I don't think it wasn't in West Yorkshire, but I think it was in South Yorkshire, where there was a young Vietnamese boy found scrounging in some dustbins or something, you know, destitute on the streets. And you know, if we get to that situation, it's horrendous. So you know, we only hope that the work that we are doing can try and really combat that sort of situation. But as you've said, it's quite stark, isn't it? The figures of more than 50% coming through Dover and finding their way up into West Yorkshire. So, you know, it really is a national and international effort that's required around all this.
And I think it's about encouraging members of the public, if they get a sense that something's not quite right, report it to us. Let us worry about trying to determine what the not quite right part is. That's our job. But at the moment, we need members of the public to be giving us that insight as to something's doesn't feel as if it should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, as you know, Warren, I'm, you know, clearly very happy to link in with you to take forward the events and the work that we will need to do with our partners. Banks are, you know, clearly one sector that I think will probably have some information that could help around intelligence and this business of the whole supply chain and businesses that may unwittingly or wittingly involved in some of this. So, you know, we need to adapt and look at the new avenues, if you like, of how we can really get a better understanding and raise awareness, perhaps amongst organisations that haven't been particularly that cited before. Because I agree that when you do generic awareness raising campaigns, sometimes if it's not targeted or to learn on what we've already done, then it might not be as effective as we want it to be going forward. But again, the national work, I will, you know, I know Greater Manchester, for example, are doing some good work, and I'm sure there are things we can share and look at what's happening in some other parts of the UK, albeit, you know, I know we are in many respects at the forefront of this. Perhaps just one final question then is around the National Referral Mechanism pilot, which West Yorkshire is a part of. Have you got any updates around how that's going, and have we learnt anything from it so far?
I mean, the pilot continues, and part of the problem, to give a real update, is the evaluation is due next month. But we still attend the Home Office meetings on a regular basis in relation to it. So it's still improving, and the thought's going for the Home Office out to take it on. The good thing that stands out, which really is for the victims, is about the slavery safeguarding leads and that quick time referral into and getting victims that additional support within a day rather than the 5 to 7 days that we're taking. It frees up two things really. One, the victim gets the support and the package and the mechanism, as you know. The second thing is there isn't members of the police staff out there looking after them and balancing them on the other side for days, and the draw on the resources of the police and our partner agencies to look after these people. So from that point of view, for the last year, that has made some great dividends, and I'm sure it will remain as part of the new way of dealing for the National Referral Mechanism. So I think that's a positive that we should look at. There are some issues around the conclusive grounds, what happens at the end of 45 days and how they sit in our community, and how the Salvation Army shares intelligence with us, which needs to come out of the back of it. And those kind of options will go through to the new Home Secretary at the end of the pilot, which there should be an evaluation, which I'll send through to you as soon as I get it at the end of August.
Yeah, no, so, but you think generally that's heading in the right direction with what you know of it at the moment, yeah?
Absolutely, I think we've had some great learning out of that.
Good. Well, you know, I look forward to the outcome of that. Hopefully, given that Theresa May is about to become the Prime Minister, we should have an open door there around taking issues forward at the national level, if indeed that's what we need to do.
I think your point, Commissioner, about focusing in on this particular campaign is a very valid one, because for an awful lot of other crime types we focus on our public sector colleagues, because most people access one way or another public sector services. This is a group of people that sadly go completely under the radar. The kids don't go to school, they don't access doctor's surgeries, but what they do is they try and find ways to eat, and they try and find places to sleep. And I think therefore the market that we need to try and target with the next campaign feels quite different. It's not unlike when we were talking about CSE, we really focused on taxi drivers and people who had rooms to rent. It feels to me as if we need to really think about how we want to focus in on our next campaign.
Yes, no, I agree, and I think in some of the figures, Warren, that you quoted around the percentages of the types of, so 52% being sexual exploitation, I think that's been a big change, hasn't it, from the initial forced labour type cases, which is, you know, I mean, it's all worrying stuff, but you know, that is even more of a concern around the sexual exploitation. But no, thank you for the report and the update. Well done with the excellent work that you and the team have already established and undertaken. And you know, I look forward to working with you to be at the forefront and further improve what we do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you.